This is the Rikon 18-inch bandsaw, model 10345. This 18-inch bandsaw has 18 inches of throat clearance, which means 18 inches from the blade here to the back of the saw, allowing that much maneuverability in that area behind the blade. It also has 12 inches of resaw capacity, which means there's 12 inches from the tabletop up to the highest point where this guard retracts so that you can resaw pieces up to 12 inches in width. It has a 2.5 horsepower motor to help handle that large resaw capacity, and it comes wired for 220. The tabletop here is about 21 inches by 19 inches. It's a very good large size for working your pieces of wood. And the overall bandsaw is about just over 6 feet tall by about 3 feet wide by about 2 feet deep and weighs about 400 pounds. Let's go ahead and take a look at what comes with the saw, how it goes together, and then an overview of the controls and adjustments on this saw. Now, when you first get this bandsaw into your shop, it does come packed in a single box. There are some loose parts in that box that you first want to remove, and we'll go over assembly of those parts. And then the first thing you want to do is stand this bandsaw up. It comes with a hoist ring that you can attach on top to help with that process, and I definitely recommend getting a friend to help you stand this thing up. Now, besides the bandsaw itself, the other things in the box include the tabletop, the front rail and the rear rail, which is already installed on this tabletop, the fence, and the owner's manual, and also a box of loose parts, which include some nuts and bolts that you need during the assembly process. The first step is to attach this cast iron top to the upper trunnion. Now, the cast iron top comes with a protective grease coating that you want to remove, and you can do that with any household degreaser. Just make sure you put something back onto that top to help protect it from rust, such as a wax or something like that. You want to first install a leveling screw or a 90-degree stop screw on the bottom of this top, and I'll show you that. And then there are 4 bolts and washers to attach this cast iron top to that upper trunnion. Here is the front underside of the tabletop, and here is that 90-degree stop screw that you'll first install on the underside of the tabletop. And I'll go over how that 90-degree stop works later on. There are 4 bolts to attach the cast iron top to the upper trunnion, 2 at the front and 2 at the back. Here are the 2 at the front. There are these bolts right up here and over here. Once the tabletop has been installed, we install the leveling screw here, the washer on top, and the bushing and wing nut here from the bottom. And this is to keep this, these 2 halves in the same plane. Of course, there are 2 halves of the tabletop here and a slot running down here so that you can get the blade off to change your blades when you want to go to a different type of blade. Take off the leveling screw, you can get the blade out through the tabletop here, insert your other blade, and reattach the leveling screw. The next step is to attach the front and the back rails to the tabletop, and that's what the fence runs on. The front rails, there are 4 wing nuts here, washers and wing nuts along the front to allow easy removal and attachment of this front rail. And again, that's to help with the blade coming on and off. So you just go ahead and put those wing nuts on and slide on the front rail, and then you can tighten up each of those wing nuts to attach this front rail. The back rail here at the back of the table simply goes on with a couple of hex nuts here at the ends. With the front and back rails now attached to the tabletop, we can slide the fence on, which hooks on the back, drops onto the front, slide back and forth, and locks in place with the lever here. There are adjustments on the fence. There's some small Allen screws for tipping the fence so it's 90 to your tabletop, and adjusting for the drift left and right. There's a couple of different Allen screws that you use to make those adjustments. The hand wheels need to be attached. There's one hand wheel up here at the top for raising and lowering the upper guides and the guard. and then there's one hand wheel here down at the bottom, and that is for tightening and loosening the belt tension for the motor. Those are installed with Allen wrenches, and when you're done, right here on the back is a handy place to store your Allen wrenches. Now that we've got everything assembled on the saw, we want to go through some adjustments and tune up this saw before making that first cut. The first thing we want to do is make sure that the blade is 90 to the table. So grab your square, and there's some adjustments to make sure that you're 90 degrees. Tilting the tabletop left and right is done here at the back of the saw. It can tilt 45 degrees to the right and 10 degrees back to the left. You first unlock this locking lever here, and then use this adjustment to rotate that tabletop. Now, to set it to 90 degrees, obviously you want to play with this and get it just right at 90 using your square and lock it down. Then you can go ahead and set the stop screw right back in here to maintain that 90. Here's a view from the front, and here is how that 90 degree stop screw works. What you do is, once you've set it to 90 degrees, if you want to tilt it to the left, the tabletop to the left, you have to move this stop out of the way. Now this bolt can come down and you can tilt the tabletop to the left. To get back to 90, tilt it up, put this back in place, and then bring your tabletop until the screw just hits this stop, and you should be back at 90 degrees. Now, you also want to go through and set your blade 90 degrees to the tabletop in the other dimension as well. And you can do that with some micro adjustment Allen screws that are here in this upper trunnion assembly. Honestly, those micro adjustments are a little bit hard to reach. There are tiny holes to reach in and get to those Allen screws right on either side of that black bolt right there. You reach down and there are little set screws that hold the upper trunnion there to the base. And then there are two more of those around here on the back. Right down inside there are again two holes with micro adjustment Allen wrenches where you can tilt this whole upper trunnion relative to the base. Now that we have the blade square to the table, we want to work on the blade tracking and tension. You want the blade to track in the center of this upper wheel. So slowly turn the wheel and use an adjustment here on the back that moves the blade forward and backwards on that wheel to make sure that you get it centered. The blade tension is set with this handle right here, which raises and lowers this upper wheel to add more or less tension to your blade. There's also a handy blade tension needle right over here that you can use as a relative measure of how tight your blade is. There's even a handy window here in the upper wheel housing so that you can see that blade tension right through the housing. Here on the back is the adjustment for blade tracking. This is the lever to loosen the lever so that you can adjust the tracking. And while you're spinning the wheel in the front, go ahead and adjust this forward or backwards. Keep an eye on where the blade is, get it right in the center, and go ahead and lock that lever back up. Next, you want to adjust the upper and lower guides. These guides are used for tracking the saw blade accurately while you're making a cut. There's bearings, double bearings here at the top, two side bearings and a thrust bearing, and also beneath the table here, there are two side bearings and a thrust bearing. All of those need to be adjusted very, very close to your blade in order to maintain its accuracy through the cut. You first want to adjust the bearings so that they're riding just behind the gullets of your blade. So you can move this whole assembly forward and back so that your side bearings are just behind that gullet by loosening and tightening a hex screw, which is just behind here. Next, you want to get your side bearings so they're just almost touching the blade but not touching that blade. So you do that with Allen wrenches here on the front. Go ahead and insert Allen wrench here, loosen that up. You can slide the bearing left and right and then tighten it back up. Finally, you want to adjust the thrust bearing so it's riding just behind that blade. Again, this is adjusted in the same manner, loosening the Allen screw there in the center, moving it forward and backward, and then tightening back up. The lower guides under the table are adjusted in the exact same manner as the upper guides. You want your upper guides to be just above your workpiece as you're cutting it to give maximum support to that blade. So to adjust the cutting height, There's a release lever here on the back, and then you just raise and lower those guides using this handle. It goes pretty quickly, and then go ahead and tighten the guide assembly back up. There's a quick release here on the back of the bandsaw, which quickly detensions your blade, prolonging the lifetime of your bandsaw blades. The Rikon bandsaw has very good dust collection features. There's a 4-inch dust port here at the front, and also a second 4-inch dust port here along the side, down at the bottom by the motor. Additionally, there is a brush here on the lower wheel at the back that keeps that wheel nice and clean of dust as it's spinning around. Also, there's some rubber here at the front that the blade goes through to help direct that dust out this front 4-inch dust port. This Rikon bandsaw is great to operate. There's start and stop buttons here on the left that are very large. The upper guides move up and down really easily using the hand wheel here. And there's a great large work surface for handling your pieces. So that is the Rikon 18-inch bandsaw model 10345. It's easy to unbox and install all the components that come with it. And it's also really easy to do that initial tune-up of this bandsaw. It comes with a large work surface, a great resaw capacity, and it's paired with that powerful motor to handle any work that you can throw at it. So if a bandsaw of this size, 18 inches, is something that you're considering for your workshop, I would definitely check out this Rikon model.